Sanam, welcome. Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. So here we are again, another opportunity to come together to chant the Shabad Dandan Ram Das Guru. And then we'll talk a little bit. I hope you're all doing well. Please say hi or put your name in the comments area and let us know where you're from, where you're calling in from, where you're logging in from. And then I just want to remind you that as you see at the bottom of the screen, Sikh Dharma International is also sponsoring the second global virtual Sahajpat, which is an online reading of the Sri Guru Granth Sahib from beginning to end. So there's some information there if you'd like to participate. So we hope you will. And then I'll be also reminding you about that at the end of the program, but also wanted to remind you that later at the end of this week, on Friday, we'll begin the 3HO Summer Solstice E-Summit. And so this is 3 days of online classes, and Sikh Dharma International will be participating in that. We will be offering one class a day, every day, and I'll be sharing more information about that with you as well later. All right, well, so just a reminder, we're going to chant Dandan Ram Das Guru for 11 minutes. If you would like to do that as a meditation and you want to use this mudra, the left thumb is up and the right hand wraps around it like a fist, and then the left fingers come up along the back of the left hand. And it's just gently held at the heart center and the elbows are relaxed at the sides. You're sitting straight, your chin is tucked in. Your eyes can be closed or 1/10 open, fixed at the end of your nose. And you can be silent if you like, or you can chant the words if you're familiar. So otherwise you can also just do this with your eyes closed, meditating, chanting or not. All right, so we'll start now. And
Brahma Karnam Sutta
ब्रह्म का नाम सकारिया तन तन रमदास गुण तन तन रमदास गुण जिन सिरिया तिन्ने सुवारिया जिन सिरिया तिन्ने सुवारिया तन तन रमदास गुण तन तन रमदास गुण अतन अता अतोल को अतन अता अतोल को तेरा अंत न पार मारिया तेरा अंत न पार मारिया जिन्नी तुसे से तून पार उतारिया तन तन रमदास गुण तन तन रमदास गुण जिन सिरिया तिन्ने सुवारिया जिन सिरिया Love no become crono love no become crono mar kande tunas parmariya mar kande tunas parmariya tan sutera तेरा तान सच तेरा पैस कारिया सच तेरा पैस कारिया Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Thank you for joining with us today. Let me just get a little closer to the computer here. So let's see. And who do we have with us today? We have Getting Deep and Natalie and Jazz and Nivdita. And let's see, we've got Connie, okay, from Chiapas in Mexico. We've got Saib Deep from Punjab in India. And we have Shalom Lopez and Gurpreet Singh and Emily Gurpakashkar Brenna from Colorado. And maybe that's Brina, I don't know. And I apologize for any mispronunciations. And we've got Gambardelli from Essex. All right. 100% meat-free, vegan. Wonderful. And Satkirtan. And we have Gulzan. And Rupinder is with us. So wonderful that you're all here. And as I mentioned earlier, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the comment section, and we will endeavor to get to them in the next several minutes as we are just discussing some things. So I wanted to just touch on a topic that isn't exactly related to this Shabbat, although it is. I mean, you know, the whole point of this time that we spend together is to talk about things in relation to Sikh Dharma teachings. And so the topic that I want to talk about is something called cultural appropriation. And some people are bringing it up in relation to those of us in the West who have chosen to embrace Sikh Dharma, walking on the path of a Sikh. And, you know, it's a complex topic right now, especially with all the activities going on around the world in regard to racism and equality. And I wanted to see if we could understand this idea of appropriation versus appreciation, or assimilation even. So, you know, appropriation is, when you look it up, it's about a dominant culture taking without permission aspects of a suppressed culture. And you know, as we look at Sikh Dharma, there's a lot to unpick, to understand about how that comes into play or doesn't. And the first thing I want to start with is Guru Nanak himself, who was the first guru, and understand his impact. You know, he was the stories are that he was very spiritual when he was a young child, and that he would seek out sadhus that might be traveling nearby and try to sit with them and listen to what they had to say, and you know, listen to their bhajans, their songs that they might sing, you know, to understand what was really deep within the teachings that they held. And whenever there were people of other traditions, he would also seek them out. His family, of course, was a Hindu family, but his lifelong friend was a Muslim by the name of Mardana. And Mardana played the rabab. We've talked about the rabab before, a stringed musical instrument from India. And so later, you know, after Nanak after he has his experience of samadhi in the water, Jal Samadhi, and he starts to travel. And ultimately he travels 4 or 5 different journeys over approximately 27 years, and it's mostly on foot. As you can imagine, back then there were no conveniences for travel. There were no trains, no, probably very little in the way of stagecoach kind of available options for him. So walking was mainly how he got around. There's some of his journeys where he was on a boat from one place to another. But nonetheless, the way he would travel would be that he would encamp perhaps just outside a small town or a village. And he would stay there for several days or even weeks. And he would talk with the people who would come to hear him, and he would sing his compositions, his Gurbani, his Shabads, and people would listen, and they would, start to be attracted to what Guru Nanak was teaching. And so he continued, and he'd stay there for weeks, and then he might go on to another town, or people would send word from another town saying, please come and stay, we would like to host you, and that kind of thing. And so he would go where he was called, and like that he traveled all over India, up into Kashmir, possibly into Tibet, down to Sri Lanka, and out to the west, certainly as far as Baghdad, and perhaps further. So one can only imagine that as he traveled, he was exposed to a lot of different ideas. And I think that was part of his calling, was not just to, as the story is told, that he was doing his best to kind of, on a mission to carry Satnam, carry his version of truth out into the world as best he could. But I can't help but think that there were also many things that stood out for him that he picked up along the way too, and integrated where it worked, and then later at the end of all his travels, he settled down in India and lived out the last several years of his life as more like a farmer. He just settled onto the land, and people gathered around him, and it was a whole town that grew up around him. And people would again come to listen to him speak and listen to him share his Shabads and learn from him. And then after his passing, then Guru Angad continued that tradition. And we had 10 gurus altogether. And they all continued in that tradition. They carried that same light. And through the time, people came to identify as followers of this tradition. And first, you could say they might be called, a term that now historians are using to refer to those early days, and in fact, for quite a long time in the history of Sikhs, calling them Nanak Panthis, which just means basically followers of Nanak. And so these Nanak Panthis were coming from all over, from other traditions. They weren't just all being born from one family, but whole families would come and move to where Guru Nanak was, and later Guru Angad and so forth, and declare themselves students or followers of that tradition, which later then was called Sikh Dharma, or perhaps you would use Sikhism, but followers of the Sikh tradition, and those people were called Sikhs. But they didn't, even to this day in India, Sikhs are not all born as Sikhs. It is common that, fairly common, that people will be exposed to Sikh Dharma and decide to step into it more and more, and then declare themselves to be Sikhs and live their lives as Sikhs. So my point is that, one more point before I go on. So, and one of the stimulus to this migration of people from mainly Islam or um, Hinduism into the Sikh path was the idea that Guru Nanak stressed that there is no separation, there are no uh, levels, there are no castes to be recognized. And so Sikh Dharma does not abide by the caste system. And so there were times historically when um, there were many people coming into Sikh Dharma who were from lower castes, who saw an opportunity to say, well, I don't agree with this either. It's not fair that just because of where I was born and to which family I was born, I am limited. I am barred from doing things and not able to study and that kind of thing. So people embraced the values in Sikh Dharma, moved into them, moved into that path, onto that path, and became Sikhs. And so nowadays, in the last 50 years, those of us in the West who have, through the teachings of Kundalini Yoga and Yogi Bhajan, were exposed to Sikh Dharma. Many of us have decided to step in and become more and more aligned with that path, and until the point where we relate to ourselves as being Sikhs. And some people want to point and say, well, no, that's just cultural appropriation, meaning that you're not holding the value. But I will tell you that when it's done in this way, it's really cultural appreciation. It's the same thing that Guru Nanak did as he traveled. He saw things that worked and he incorporated them. And so people seeing that they are in some way aligned with the values of Sikh Dharma and step into it, they are simply doing the same thing. They appreciate aspects of that and they incorporate it into their lives more and more, and they declare themselves to be Sikhs or not, whatever. But I'm just saying that those of us who have done that have done it out of a meaningful relationship and understanding of the tenets, teachings, and values of Sikh Dharma, not simply as a fashion, not simply as something cool to do. Many of us have been on this path of Sikh Dharma for more than 40 years. And we have had children born to us who have grown up as Sikhs. And they are also now, understand themselves to be Sikhs. So the question about whether this is appreciation or appropriation, I think, is pretty thin. That we are, most of us, clearly acknowledging and valuing everything within the essence of those teachings and bringing them into our heart and living from that. That it is based on the experience that we had through the practice of these teachings and not on some attempt to impress others with some kind of fad or fashion. And there's the idea that today, when we're questioning a lot of things, we're having to reevaluate what is true. We're having to reevaluate our own understanding of how we may have seen things in one way in the past, but perhaps there is a more enlightened view that is available to us today. And I think that is true. And I think that we have to take the time to embrace the opportunity to step into really questioning our own choices and checking in with that inner self to be sure that these choices are made entirely out of devotion and experience, and not out of somebody telling us to do it, not out of some misguided idea that it will somehow impress others, but really doing it from our heart, from our true experience of the values to be gained along this path. And I'm not here to tell anybody that you should or shouldn't be a Sikh at all. I'm actually just saying that every one of us needs to make that choice and decision, and make sure it's made with full clarity, you know. And I don't think there are very many people who are misaligned in this area. But there are some people who want to criticize. There are some people who just want to stir things up. And, you know, it's a shame when people come around others and just criticize. You know, we have this term now, Zoom bombing, you know, the idea that people come into a meeting and just disrupt it and then leave. And I would say that there are people out there today who are coming around anyone that they can try to get away with this, and you know, causing problems. We've seen this in the streets with white supremacists pretending to be marching for the rights of you know, for Black Lives Matter, and yet really what they're there is to do is just to cause problems, agitate, and make everybody more anxious and more chaos, make the world more chaotic. And so we have to be cautious about understanding when criticism arrives. Is it real? Is it based on, is it coming from a place of wanting to help? Or is it only coming from a place of wanting to tear down? And so that's where we have to be alert, and we have to listen deeply into what is being said and dig a little deeper into what others are saying, but also be ready to confront ourselves and see whether, is this true? Is there a false place that I've been holding, or am I centered on some understanding of what the truth is, or what my truth is? And so I'm wondering if any of you are having discussions like this with people. Let me bring up Kiran Deep's comment. Says, I personally think that many of you have more understanding, appreciation, knowledge, practice, and values of Sikhi than many of us who are born into Sikh families. You know, that's a compliment, I guess, and I appreciate it, Kiran Deep. But I in all modesty, I want to say that, you know, I have so much to learn from my brothers and sisters who have been born into Sikh families, Punjabi Sikh families also, that no one has a monopoly on the truth or clarity of understanding. I feel that there's so much work to be done here, and there has been over the years some misunderstanding, some arrogance on both sides between Western Sikhs and Punjabi Sikhs. And it's very sad, very unfortunate. I hope we're getting beyond that point, you know, but, and I understand that, you know, there are some things that happen that may be offensive to some Punjabi Sikhs. And, you know, we do our best. We try to educate. But with someone, for instance, a yoga student who gets a spiritual name, because they're genuinely interested in what that technology is. And for Punjabi Sikhs, their name is their name. It's just like, they don't question it as much. It's just what it is. Same way that we in the West, when we get our names at birth, we don't question what they mean, what the significance is in terms of our destiny. But when yoga students reach out to get a spiritual name, they're trying to use that as a way to step into some change, to leave behind some of the baggage that they may associate with that original name. You know, maybe it's how their parents shouted that name at them to shame them. And or maybe it's the way that name makes them feel less than the way they want to feel. And so they're looking for some other choice. And so when they get that name, perhaps it gives them that chance to step into a different identity, to create something new for themselves. Now, there are many who may not use their name in the end, or may not really embrace the true meaning of that. And, that's unfortunate. But it is our prayer that ultimately those people will see the value that they were given and use that name with reverence. But we can't control that. It's just like, when you serve prasad in the Gurdwara to someone who then takes it home and feeds his dog with it, that isn't ideal. But you can't control it, You try to, and not that the dog isn't worthy. It's more about that, that the prasad was given to that person as a blessing, and that they should see it that way and treat it with respect and devotion. But it's just maybe not a great example, but it's just, you can't control what you give to people. How they use it is up to them. And so we do our best, and we try to encourage and talk about it. But in the end, people are, they have their own demons and their own challenges. And so we can only do so much. Like for many years, we were using Shabad sheets in many of our Gurdwaras, printed documents, pieces of paper with the words of the Shabad on. And there still may be some of that going on. Nowadays, lots of Gurdwaras have projection screens, and so you can see the words up on the screen. You don't have to have a Shabad sheet. But it was always a challenge because people would then take the Shabad sheet and put it on the floor or throw it away, perhaps, which was definitely less than ideal, because we respect these words. We respect them as embodiment of this consciousness in the Guru, the Shabad Guru. And therefore, yes, it is paper, but it's also these precious words. So we try to treat them with more respect. And people don't always get that, and we do our best to educate and remind. But in the end, we can't stop every incident of disrespect. And so it's the same with these names. We do our best, but it is a tool that we hope they will use. Anyway, I think I've talked long enough. Let's see. Kinadeep, I'm going back to you here quickly. Totally agree. I only said you and us in reference to what you said about those who put you down. It's sad. Yeah, of course, Kinadeep. I truly understand that, the words are sometimes hard to find to talk about this without seemingly to create us and them, separation. Pav Singh has something to say here. Let's see what he has says. He says, it's beautiful to see Sikhs come from all backgrounds, cultures, races. It's like all these beautiful colors making a rainbow. we can always learn from others who bring a different experience. I don't know why I bother to speak. You guys seem to have all the answers anyway. So I appreciate that sentiment. Love saying it was beautiful. And all right, well, I'm going to wrap up today. I just want to remind you, as the streaming banner is going across the bottom, that starting on Friday will be the 3HO Summer Solstice E-Summit. And on the first day at 11 o'clock Mountain Time, there will be a class with Kirtan Singh, who is a member of Sikh Dharma International and a leader from Los Angeles. And he will be teaching with Rupinder Kaur, a teacher and leader from Chile. And so on that first class, it will be multilingual. They will be sharing in both English and Spanish. And it'll be a class about Mool Mantra. And there'll be a practice in there of a meditation that is very powerful. So I hope you can join that class. On Saturday, we're going to have a class at the same time, 11 o'clock Mountain Time. On Saturday, the class will be with Sarasat Simran Singh from Chardikala Jata, and he'll be talking about grace through sacrifice and service, and sharing some Shabad, sharing some practice back and forth. And all of these classes will also incorporate some question and answers. So, and then on Sunday, I'll be teaching at 11 o'clock Mountain Time. And I'm going to be teaching about understanding the values of listening. We all can really understand that right now. We need to do a lot of listening. And so I'm going to be using the words of Guru Nanak from Japji, from the 8th Pauri of Japji. And we'll be talking about deep listening. And we'll be doing some practice. And then there'll also be questions and answers too. So all of those 3 days will have some interesting classes. And as I say, the E-Summit will have classes all day. And so I hope you'll participate. And if you didn't see it earlier, we were also streaming information about the virtual Sahaj Path that begins, let's see, I think it begins tomorrow. So you might want to check that out. I can put that in the banners real quickly. And there it is. And you can sign up to read online, and there's the link, sikhdharma.org/virtual-sahaj-path. Anyway, so thank you all for attending today, and for those of you who contributed, very much appreciated what you said. And I look forward to seeing you on Thursday. So we'll have another class on Thursday, and then we will skip our normal Friday program of home kirtan and chat. But the following week, we will have a wonderful guest, Guru Ganesha Singh. And so we'll see you then. And may you stay healthy, may you stay safe, and stay home if you can. All blessings. Satnam. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.